Will I ever be able to write something great? I hope so. So very much. Because writing allows me to record everything. My thoughts, ideals, and fantasies. This is what Anne Frank wrote in her diary during World War II. And after the war, her diary was turned into a book. The book has become so famous that those words are now painted on the walls of the school that she went to. And only a year after making this diary entry, Anne Frank was killed. Anne was Jewish, and because of that, her life was taken from her. She was only 15 years old. Anne Frank began keeping a diary on her 13th birthday. Most of the entries came during her 2 years in hiding. Anne Frank was born June 12, 1929, and her sister Margot is 3 years older. Her mother Edith was a stay-at-home mother, and her father Otto worked in a bank. They lived together in Frankfurt, Germany. Life was good in Germany. Anne and Margot had many other Jewish friends that they would play with. All seemed to be well. But that would all change in 1933 with the rise of the anti-Semitic party, also commonly known as the Nazi Germans. Their leader was a man named Adolf Hitler. They hated the Jews. At the time, Germany was a poor country, and Hitler promised the people wealth and glory. He wanted the Germans to be united under one leader because they were being threatened by foreign enemies. And to the Nazis, the Jews are Germany's greatest enemy. Hitler had a way of convincing little by little the German people. They started, believing him. The Nazis didn't waste any time. As soon as they rose to power, they went straight to work. They started arresting anyone who had ideas different than their own. They would put them in prison camps and burnt their belongings. Edith and Otto began to worry for their children's safety, so they uprooted and they moved to the Netherlands. And when Anne was 5, Amsterdam was her new home. But Hitler's strength was growing like wildfire, and on May 10, 1940, the Nazis crossed into the Netherlands. The advance into the Netherlands was so powerful that they completely occupied it in only 5 days. The Nazis now had total control of the Netherlands. What they did in Germany, they could now do in the Netherlands, and that's exactly what they did. When Anne turned 13, she received a diary. She had always wanted one, and as soon as she got it, she began writing in it. Her diary would become her new best friend. Only 3 weeks after receiving her diary, though, Anne and her family were forced into hiding. When on one Sunday afternoon, the postman dropped off a letter for Anne's sister Margot. The letter stated that she needed to report to work back in Germany. Everyone knew that if she were to return, that was ultimately a death sentence. But if she didn't go, they would also come looking for her. So Anne and her family packed up some clothes and walked an hour across town to take up hiding in a building behind her father's work. The hiding place has 2 stories and an attic. Anne and her family live on the bottom floor. Anne and Margot have their own room, and Otto and Edith have theirs. The second floor is occupied by another family. And the second floor also houses the kitchen for both families. And the attic is used for storage. They aren't allowed to look out the windows or go outside at all. They hang curtains in all the windows, and they were to always remain closed. Word finally makes its way to the Netherlands that the Nazis are ordered to get all the Jews out of the country by July 1st, 1943. In secret, the Nazis are ordered to kill as many Jews as they can. From Anne's room at night, she can hear the Allied forces' aircraft overhead, trying to do everything they can to stop the German Nazi progression. The Allied forces were extremely powerful, but slow. Anne and her family would listen to the radio updates any chance that they could, hoping for good news that the Nazis were overtaken. Anne even wrote in her diary that she had a feeling friends were approaching. While the Allied forces were attacking in Paris, someone phoned the German forces in Amsterdam, telling them that there are Jews hiding at the address where Anne and her family were hiding. They broke down the door and made their way into the annex, and that's where they took Anne and her family as prisoners. Not all were found and arrested in the house, however. Miep, who was living above, finds Anne's diary and decides to hold on to it, to keep it safe for when Anne returns. After Anne's arrest, she is moved from one concentration camp to another. On one particular trip to a camp, it took 3 days. Anne had to survive the whole journey without food or water. At the end of the 3-day train ride, she arrived at Auschwitz, a concentration camp in Poland. After being there for a month, she is then transferred to Bergen-Belsen camp. Anne survives there for only 5 months before succumbing to a cold, sickness, hunger, and exhaustion in March of 1945. And sadly, it was only 2 weeks later that the British forces liberated Bergen-Belsen. But by that time, there are more people dead there than there are living. Margot, Anne's sister, died days before at the same camp from typhus. Anne's mother, Edith, dies from hunger and exhaustion at Auschwitz. Only Anne's father, Otto, would survive. Of the 107,000 Dutch Jews sent to concentration camps, only 5,000 survived. In May of 1945, the Germans finally surrendered and the Nazis were defeated. After Anne's father returns to the Netherlands, he finds out what really happened to his family, tragically. At which time Miep hands him Anne's diary. He finds everything that she has ever written, including her dream of turning her diary into a book. And her father Otto carries out her dream. He gathered all the notes that she had ever published in her diary. Today, Anne's diary has sold over 30 million copies, and the family's hiding place in Amsterdam is now a museum that is visited by 1 million people each and every year. Anne Frank was wise beyond her years. She understood values and sense of purpose, no matter affiliation or religious background. She was proud to be who she was up until the time that she gave her last breath. Today, we as Americans seem to go with the flow so we don't have to face opposition or pushback. Being original and owning who you are is exactly what you were created and meant to do. When we wander from this premise, we must remind ourselves, if Anne and her family would have conformed and renounced their ideals and principles, they could have very well lived a full life. But they chose to remain true to themselves, regardless of the consequences.